So for today's video, I used mouthwash and I clipped my toenails. However, I can't do anything about the sun, so the lighting is going to go in and out and look a little funky, but I can only do so much, people. TMI? Hi BookTube, this is Kim at K. Becker's Books. Today I'm going to bring you a tag. It's a little bit of an older one, but I just recently discovered it and I thought this one is going to be fun. This was first created by One Book, One Review, and I will put her channel down below. I also wanted to do this in anticipation of March of the Mammoths coming up next month. So what I'm going to do is the big book tag, and as I said, it was originated by One Book, One Review, and the basic gist is to show you 5 books on your shelf, which are the biggest books, the longest books, and then come up with 2 books that you may own or not, I guess, that are just as long, but you either have avoided reading or you still want to read or you've been intimidated to read. So here we go. I'm going to start with the books that I've already read. I cheated a little bit because that's what I do. I rebel. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 single books, and then I have number 6, which is a combination of 2 books by the same author. But I wanted to show them to you. And because of the quantity of books that I have, I'm not going to go into a lot of descriptive detail. So here we go. Now, if you've been watching any of my videos, you know that last year I read The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas with Dee Dee from Brown Girl Reading in a read-along. This took 2 months. It was October and November last year. It's now one of my favorite books. This one weighs in at... there's a bunch of notes in the back, so let's see. I'm trying to get, here we go. Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize it was this long. It is 1,243 pages. This is by far the longest fiction book I've ever read. I have read books longer than this for grad school, but I read books for classes over 2 semesters or more. This one we read in 2 months, and again, the longest fiction I've ever read. It is very quickly the story of Edmond Dantes, who is unjustly accused and imprisoned for 7 years, and what happens after he gets out. Excellent book. I loved it. One of my all-time favorites. The next one I read several years ago. Yeah, a few years ago now. This, and I've also talked about this one before too. Again, this is another one of my all-time favorite books. This one clocks in at 858 pages, and it is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. It's a Pulitzer Prize winning book. This one is two former, let's see, I can't even see the description. It's 2 former Border Patrol agents, Texas Rangers, 2 aging former Texas Rangers that decide they're going to start doing cattle runs from Mexico to Wyoming, I think. Again, I've said this before, this is the quintessential Western. This is almost the Western to read if you are a fan of Westerns. I never had been, but we picked this book for our book group, and I think most of us, if not the majority of us, absolutely loved it. One of my favorite books of all time. The writing is spectacular, and Larry McMurtry is one of my favorite authors. The next one that I finished last year, it's not a new book, but I read it last year, and I'm going to give you the page count first. This is it's one of the shorter ones. It's 771 pages, and this is Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch. I don't really have to describe it. It's been everywhere. It's already had a movie out. So I read this last year. It is quickly the story of Theo, who at, I think, 12 or 13 years old, loses his mother to a terrorist bombing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. And obviously it's the defining point in his life and describes what happens to him from there. It was a really good book. It's a little polarizing. I think Donna Tartt herself is a polarizing author, so you either love it or you hate it. I absolutely loved it. And the next one is again, I'm going for the page count. This one is, again, there's so many notes. There's notes and glossary. Here we go. This one is 804 pages in just the text, and it's The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is a fantasy novel that I believe came out last year. It was published in 2019, so it came out last year. And I should have remembered that because I was wicked excited to order a brand new hardcover. That's how thick it is. It's like, it's got the texture on it and it's shiny. And I absolutely love the picture, the artwork of the dragon. This is a fantasy, high fantasy novel of a queendom of tribes of dragons, good and bad. There is feminist representation, there is LGBTQ representation, and it's a wicked good story. I didn't think it was the most perfect book written. It wasn't a book that I loved, but it was definitely a book that I turned the pages on and was really excited to read. So it did get a little clunky at times. The writing got a little cringy here and there, but I still really enjoyed reading it. This was a huge hit, and when I say a while ago, this was, at least 15 years ago that we read this book. It was published in 1998, and this is I Know This Much Is True by Wally Lamb. I think I forgot. I don't know if I did the page count. Hold on. This one came in at 897 pages. It's the story of Dominic and his identical twin who has paranoid schizophrenia. And it's a family saga talking about his Italian mother, his stepfather who is a former military man, and it's Dominic's story about gaining independence from his brother, from his family, what it means to have a severely mentally ill sibling. I absolutely love this book, and this was a book that when I finished it for book group, I turned around and started reading it immediately. I think I set myself a record of how short of a time it took me to read it. It might have been less than a week, and that's a lot of pages, but absolutely loved it. So my next submission is the same author, but there's two different books. So I'm breaking the rule. I don't care. And the first book is one of my favorite books of all time. And again, we read this many, many years ago. The page count in this book, unfortunately, is 666 pages. Freaks me out. But I'm going to include the acknowledgments for 668 pages. This book was published in 1999. Again, we read this for book group, and this is Ahab's Wife by Sena Naslund. This was one of my favorite books. I would open the book to any page and read a paragraph or two and absolutely love the writing. It's so descriptive and majestic. I so love this book, and just like it says, it's the account of Captain Ahab's wife who's left behind as he goes and searches for the white whale. I absolutely loved it. It's an epic tour de force. It's a worthy female companion to Moby Dick as I'm reading the back cover. It's based on 19th century sources and peopled with a rich array of fictional, mythic, and historical characters. This ambitious novel is a kind of technicolor dream quilt that turns Moby Dick inside out. I absolutely loved it. Now, the other book by the same author has, and she writes long books, 542 pages, and this one was published in 2006. This came after Ahab's Wife. This is Abundance by Sena Naslund, and it's a fictionalized account of Marie Antoinette. Again, loved this book. And sometimes with those big long books, the big fat ones, they're intimidating. So you have to almost motivate yourself, gear yourself up to open one of those tomes and just dive in and get started. One of the biggest advantages is that when you get involved in a big book, it's big for a reason. A lot of times editors aren't going to cut it down because it's so spectacular in its length and the story warrants that many pages. Those books, I can highly recommend all of them. If you want to start with a big giant book, pick up one of those. Now, March, as I said, is March of the Mammoths, and I have a pile in my room about 2 feet high of books that would apply for the March of the Mammoths read-along. And I'll show you a few of them. Again, not too much description, but this one is Anthony Trollope's Can You Forgive Her? And it would be the first Anthony Trollope book I will read if I choose to read this in March of the Mammoths. And let me tell you, let's see, page count is 830 pages. I have to double check if the March of the Mammoths guideline is 850 pages or 800. I'm not sure. And once I do my official March of the Mammoths video, I will tell you that. And quickly, Alice Vassivore cannot decide whether to marry her ambitious but violent cousin George, or the uptight and gentlemanly John Gray, and finds herself accepting and rejecting each of them in turn. Increasingly confused about her own feelings and unable to forgive herself for such vacillation, her situation is contrasted with that of her friend Lady Glencora, forced to marry the rising politician Plantagenet Palliser in order to prevent the worthless Burgo Fitzgerald from wasting her vast fortune. This is the first in Anthony Trollope's Palliser series, and I would love to read this. So we'll see if I pick that as one of my March of the Mammoths books. This one is nonfiction, and I actually hauled, this was in my very last video last week for a book haul. I'm not going to say too much more about it, and it's Norman Mailer's The Executioner's Song. This is, oh boy, I think there's a bunch of notes in here too. It's over 1,000 pages. Yeah, there's a bunch of notes, but it's well over 1,000 pages. Nonfiction about the true story of Gary Gilmore. It sounds really good. I think this one is by far the longest the longest fiction on my shelf, clocking in at 1,474 pages. I don't know if you can see how small the print is. So I would love to pick this up in March. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. I actually read the first chapter and it was hilarious. And this is A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth. Look at the, oh my gosh, look at that. This is a story set in India. It's a love story. Lata and her mother, Mrs. Rupa Mehra, are both trying to find, through love or through exacting maternal appraisal, a suitable boy for Lata to marry. We'll see. Talk about intimidating. The next one is a book I've had on my shelf for a really long time, and it is, I'm trying to move quickly. It is in hardcover, 830 pages, and this is Eleanor Catton's The Luminaries. Let's see. It's 1866, and young Walter Moody has come to make his fortune upon the New Zealand goldfields. On the stormy night of his arrival, he stumbles across a tense gathering of 12 local men who have met in secret to discuss a series of unexplained events. A wealthy man has vanished, a prostitute has tried to end her life, and an enormous fortune has been discovered in the home of a luckless drunk. Moody is soon drawn into the mystery, a network of fates and fortunes that is as complex and exquisitely ornate as the night sky. This is definitely a contender. I've had that for a while on my shelf, and it was published in 2013. This next one is almost an assumed mammoth book that so many people are going to pick up. I have not had it for very long. It's a new release as of last year. It is 988 pages and was on the shortlist for the Booker Prize last year, and it's Ducks Newburyport. I don't think I'm going to try this for March, but I may start it at the end of March, depending on how many other big fat mammoth books I get through. But I'm not going to describe this one. It's all over the place. I do want to begin this soon, and I'd like to do this little pieces at a time, because as has been described all over BookTube, it is page after page after page of text without, there's a few section breaks. It's stream of consciousness style of writing. So there's a lot here. There's a lot to digest. I will probably start it at the end of March and see how long it takes me, and maybe read, I don't know, however, 100 pages a week, and we'll see how it goes. I'll try to do that over a couple of months. That's it. Those are some really super big, long books. pick up any one of these, and I think that you would love them. They are, almost all of them, pretty superb page turners. I'm not sure if you are intimidated by reading big, gigantic books, but it is definitely worth your while to try something different. Probably towards the end of this month, I will have a more official March of the Mammoths video where I talk about all of my choices and trying to decide how I'm going to do this. I could read one Mammoth book that month. I could try to read a couple. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Hope you're having a good day. Subscribe and comment below, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye. What are you intimidated by? Snakes? Spiders? The dark? What scares you? Roller coasters? Getting lost? I don't know, there's so many things that we could have phobias about. What about books that are too long? Have you tried it? I don't know about you, but I like big books and I cannot lie.